An introduction to returning to work after acquired brain injury. My name is Gwen Windsor. I'm an occupational therapist on the Saskatchewan South Acquired Brain Injury Outreach Team. Return to work. We're working to try to better understand what factors contribute to successful vocational outcomes after an acquired brain injury. Work is a very demanding, stressful, and competitive environment. These are the kinds of environments that people with a significant brain injury have trouble functioning within. Gaining or obtaining employment is one issue. Maintaining that employment is a much more important and difficult issue. Often the long-term deficits such as fatigue and memory problems make return to work very challenging and sometimes unobtainable. Statistics gathered by one of the occupational therapists on our team for his caseload from 2000 to 2003 were as follows. He was following 124 adults with moderate to severe acquired brain injury. During this time, 27 of those clients, only 22%, were employed in some capacity. 12 were working in either their own business or farming, and none at a pre-injury level. 8 were working at a full-time level. 4 of those had several jobs, 2 at a less demanding job, and 2 in a highly supported employment that allowed for accommodations related to their disability. 7 were working at a part-time level, 4 of those in their previous occupation, 3 in new employment, and 2 with several different employers. Many factors impact an individual's successful return to work, and also whether or not that level of work performance is sustainable. These issues are environmental and person. Most of these factors are beyond our control. Environmental factors predicting a successful return to work include the following. Are there coordinated rehab services that are available? This can include acute care, inpatient rehab, outpatient rehab, community services, and third-party payer support. The client's relationships with rehab services. Are they involved and supportive? What sorts of formal, but then also what sorts of natural supports are available? Formal supports are paid supports, while natural supports are family, friends, work sites. What's the economy like? In a good economy where there are lots of jobs available, an employer may be more willing to carve a job to meet a client's capacity. In a more difficult economy where competition is higher, employers may be a lot less likely to accommodate individuals. Also, relationships and stigma. The client's relationships with their employer before or with their community members, and any kind of stigma attached to the client or their injury. Person factors impacting return to work include, but are not limited to, the following. Symptoms that might be interfering with work. This can include usually fatigue, headache, pain, cognitive challenges, education and or prior work experience. Outcomes indicate that clients with higher education and more successful prior work experience are of course going to have probably an easier time returning to work in some capacity. Motivation and work expectations. What's the client's desire to return to work? And what are their work expectations? Are they expecting to walk right back into what they were able to perform right before their injury? Are they expecting that they won't need to employ any compensatory techniques? Or are their expectations quite realistic? Injury factors, the type and extent of the acquired brain injury. Are there any other injuries like soft tissue injury or pain that might impact somebody's ability to function? Ethnicity, this one's figured prominently in the literature. Those with minority ethnic backgrounds unfortunately do appear to be less likely to successfully attach to work after an acquired brain injury. And then of course substance abuse. Anybody struggling with substance, alcohol or drugs before an injury or after an injury is going to have more difficulty successfully attaching to work. Additional predictors include the client's age. Of course, young adults may have more luck returning to work if they've had some prior work experience. Other injury predictors, as mentioned above, in-person factors, the severity and cause. Is the brain injury quite focal, as in a stroke situation, or is it more global damage, like in a traumatic brain injury after a car accident or assault? The duration of the acute rehab. Common sense tells us the longer someone's in rehab, the better their outcomes might be. Or it might be an indicator of a more severe injury, and therefore less likely to be able to return to some sort of work. Post-acute emotional adjustment can have a huge impact on somebody's ability to return to work. Awareness of and acceptance of deficits. If I'm working with two different clients and one is quite aware and accepting of their deficits, they're more likely to employ compensatory techniques and accept adaptations in their job. If a client, because of their injury, has impaired awareness or is unaccepting of their challenges, they might be more unlikely to accept compensatory techniques and adaptations, and therefore be less successful. The client's functional status at discharge from hospital. Of course, the higher the functional status at discharge, the more likely they are to be able to successfully reattach to some sort of work. And then neuropsychological factors. These are cognitive factors that might impact somebody's capacity to function in the work environment. Pre-injury psychological adjustment. People struggling with mental health challenges before an injury are certainly not going to be in a better position after their injury to manage in the challenging work environment. Clients' pre-morbid work status, that is to say their work status before their injury. If someone was fully employed and successful and sustainable in their work environment before their injury, they're going to be in a better position to return to some sort of successful work environment. Educational attainment, I touched on this before. The higher the level of education, statistically more likely to successfully attach to some sort of competitive employment after their injury. And if there are any litigation and insurance issues. Insurance can be a support as a third-party payer in terms of funding graduated return to work programs. But on the other hand, litigation can confound someone's return to work because of the stress and secondary issues that might be involved. There's really just so many issues to consider. What I've listed above are just some of those. In terms of return to work options, we look at a few different types of options. We first, of course, try to look at return to pre-disability employment, unsupported. The employee, staff, and supervisory expectations can be a problem in this situation, especially for folks with a moderate to severe acquired brain injury. The next return to work option might be a return to pre-disability employment, supported. And this is much more common. Do we need to look at reducing hours or altering duties? We need to look at developing a comprehensive return to work plan after a thorough on-site assessment or even assessments. Physical, cognitive, environmental, and psychological job demand analysis. What's involved in their work day to day? And education of other staff in the workplace. Another option might be a return to a lower level position. For a lot of people, this is an undesirable option, but one that's necessary, especially earlier in recovery. Vocational services in Saskatchewan are another return to work option. Supported employment programs such as the Saskatchewan Abilities Council, Partners in Employment, SILC, EAPD, etc. These groups can assist in developing job readiness skills, and they can provide career exploration, vocational assessments, work trials, on-the-job training, and job coaching assistance. Even if some of these programs may not be in your community, you may still be able to access their supports. In our experience, you have to familiarize yourself with what's available in your community. As I said, both the formal supports that I've listed above, but also the informal or natural supports. Return to work is often the final step in one's recovery and should not be attempted prematurely. We also have to monitor a return to work because demands at work can affect performance in other areas of functioning. Our other roles as parent or partner or friends can be really impacted if a return to work is progressing too quickly or too demanding. We want to start low and go slow. This means in terms of hours and job tasks. We want to work with all agencies involved, the employee, the supervisor, the staff, union, CPP, SGI if they're involved, WCB if they're involved. Make sure everybody's around the table communicating and focused on the same return to work plan. We want to formulate an attainable return to work plan to ensure success. We want it to be safe, we want it to be successful, and we want it to be sustainable. Be innovative in your thinking. Ask yourself and all of those involved, what do we need to do to make this successful? What sorts of compensatory strategies might be helpful? What kinds of environmental adaptations might be helpful? What kinds of supports does the client and their workplace need? The use of programs that involve work placements can be very valuable. This can include high school work experience programs or returning to work in a supernumerary capacity where an employee is an extra while they're returning to work. And placements can often lead to employment. Monitor a return to work program regularly to ensure success and adjust plans as necessary. It may occur over several months. There's nothing predictable about a return to work program, especially for clients with acquired brain injury. Everybody's an individual, everybody's needs are individual, and their success is going to progress at very individual rates. Don't burn an employer. Don't promise that a client can manage something that they might not be able to. We don't want to set a client up to fail because ultimately it does burn the employer, impacts their business and their ability to support the client for the longer term or take on other clients in any kind of work capacity. On-the-job training tends to be more successful than academic-based training for clients with acquired brain injury, and I touched on this on some of my other presentations, that any kind of job training in the actual work environment, in context, is going to be more impactful. If you are interested in more information on returning to work after ABI, I've attached some references for you to review at your convenience. At this time, I'd like to thank you for listening to this module, and I hope you've gained some knowledge that will assist you now and in the future.